If relationships are the real currency in life, if referrals are the lifeblood of business, how do we, the entrepreneurs, the small business owners, compete in this ever-changing, fast-paced world? How do we become more so we can attract more? My name is Curtis Lucy and I'm your host. Those are the questions, and in this podcast, we will reveal the secrets. In this episode with Stacey Randall, you are going to learn how to get more referrals without asking. That's right, without asking for referrals. And she's got an amazing process to help you become a referral ninja. So here we go with Stacey Randall. All right, so now, Stacey, please share with us, who you are. We're going to get into just a minute about what you do and how you're going to help people attract a lot more referrals than they're currently getting right now. But share a little bit about your background and who you are.
Yeah. So, I don't know if it's as sexy and exciting to start with the personal stuff, but obviously it is the part that makes me who I am and obviously what drives me for what I do. So I am married. We have 3 children. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we have a 12-year-old son, a 10-year-old daughter, and then we have custody of our 13-year-old nephew. We've actually had custody of him since he was 7. So overnight, back in the summer of 15, we went from a party of 4 to a party of 5. And so we really, with my husband and I, there is a big focus on making sure that we are parents that are around. And so that was a big driver for me to start my own business. And I'm also a member of the Business Failure Club, which is actually why I'm here today having a whole conversation with you about referrals, because of the lessons learned when my first business failed. And so, but for me, being an entrepreneur was something I always wanted to do. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. I call them the crazy kind because they all own restaurants or they're in the hospitality field. But of course, for me, being an entrepreneur means that control of my time and when I work and the schedule and the freedom and the flexibility so that I can be a hands-on mom at the same time, having a successful business on my own terms. So that's a little bit about me. That's
awesome. Well, it was a great hook that you just had, and I would love for you to go back and share that failure if you don't mind.
Oh, of course. Everybody's got to have that good story, right? In the background that's like, oh, look at that. That's my lessons learned from, the hard knocks lessons that we have in School of Hard Knocks. So for me, I actually always knew I wanted to own a business. It was more about what am I going to do? Like, what was that going to look like? And so when I knew it would not be a brick and mortar, I was pretty clear early on, I didn't want a brick and mortar type business. And I didn't want to do anything that my family was doing. I was like, I did not want to own a restaurant or a cafe or anything like that. As I went through my early years after graduating from college and going through corporate America and figuring out what expertise that I have that I could actually make money on and share and actually impact people. And so for me, my very first company that I started was an HR consulting firm. So a human resource consulting firm. I focused on employee engagement and generational diversity. And I had big name clients. Like when I first started my business, I had big name clients like KPMG and BDO. I would eventually bring on Coca-Cola Bottling Consolidated and Ally Bank. And so when you look at that business, you're like, wow, those are big name companies. I was published in some well-respected publications like Accounting Today and World at Work. But the truth is, behind the scenes, that business had a secret. And the secret would be the thing that would ultimately lead to my downfall. And that was, I didn't have a consistent way of filling the prospect pipeline. I didn't have a consistent way of bringing prospects into my business. I would land a client like BDO, and it may be a 1 year or 2 year engagement, or I'd land a project with KPMG, but then it would be like, you'd look up and then the work would be over. And you'd be like, oh my gosh, I need another client. And so the hustling and the networking and the connecting with people would start all over again for me, which is a very normal way, I believe, to start a business in your first or second year. But I was still on that roller coaster 4 years later. And that really would be the reason why I wouldn't make it to the 5-year mark, when I'd have to realize this isn't working. I'm going to have to hang it up. At some point, you need to start scaling. And I was like, you can't really scale when you're drowning. And eventually for me, it would actually lead to me hanging up my shingle and declaring that the business had failed. And then, of course, going back to corporate America. But it was from the lessons there that I learned about that business failure, going back to corporate America. Why did I not succeed? I'm capable of success. So why did I not succeed? Why are others succeeding? And I started looking back to my big problem, which was consistently filling the pipeline, always having people that were ready to say yes, or having enough folks saying not now that when they said yes, there'd always be work coming or clients clients, right, in the waiting, in the wings. And for me, I realized that was my big issue. So I started looking back, okay, where did my clients come from? And I realized that my first business never received a single referral. Huh. Which is crazy, right? So I look back, I'm like, wait a minute, not a single referral. And actually, the only referral I received was 2 years after I'd shut down the business and I was back in corporate America. And so I was like, this is kind of a problem. I need to figure out the mechanisms to grow a business. And I knew when my business failed and I went back to corporate America, oh, I'm getting out. Like I was already planning the exit strategy to start another business. It was a matter of what would I do? Because it wasn't going to be HR consulting again. And then it was a matter of how do I overcome what held me back the first time around. And so when I started, I got certified when I was in corporate as a productivity coach. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to start a productivity and business coaching practice. And so that's what I did when I started my second business. And then I realized, but I've got to bring in clients in a different way. I was like, I never got a referral with the first business. Let's see if I can get referrals, right, in a different way. And let's see if I can get those referrals in addition to the networking and the 7 million cups of coffee and all the other ways, right, that we try to bring in clients. And so from that perspective, I was like, great, all right, let's go get some referrals. So like most people, right, I like went to the all-knowing Google. I'm like, tell me, how do I get referrals? And 99.9% of the advice was advice that may work for some, but didn't fit who I was. I knew it wasn't going to work for me. And I knew if I didn't find a different way that I would be stuck without any referrals. And that old school advice that's been around forever that permeates, I think, the internet and all the sales training and all the books about referrals is that you've got to ask. And if you're not asking, then you're probably paying and offering a commission. And if you're not paying or paying a commission, right, then you're probably being overly promotional and gimmicky, or you're networking and knowing a ton of people, so they'll just happen. And what I found when I looked at the brain science and the psychology behind referrals, I just was like, I probably can reverse engineer this into a way to make it work for me where I don't have to do any of those things that make me uncomfortable and feel awkward and still have success. It was just a theory. I didn't know if it would work, but I had a business failure that was like the kick in the pants, constantly been like, you don't want to go back to corporate, so figure this out. You know what it's like to have a business failure. And so I guinea pigged on my own business, on my business and productivity coaching practice. And in my first year, I got 112 referrals that I didn't ask for. And I've done that consistently ever since.
Now, I know you specialize on helping your clients not necessarily ask for the referral, do things that show up in people's lives to attract and earn those referrals. Can you share a couple things that you did to be able to earn, what did you say, 112 referrals?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I always tell folks the being referable is like the foundational piece. So like your ability to have a sticky client experience that makes your clients, right, willing to come back and work with you again, if that's your business model, to give you that brand buzz reputation, you know, that we're all looking for out in the marketplace to help you stand out against the competition and to also, you know, be able to earn those referrals. And so from that perspective, that sticky client experience and the things you do to be referable is very, very important. And I always tell folks that's the foundational place, right? Like you've got to be referable because I believe that people deserve referrals. If they do great work and they are worthy of referrals, right? I believe you deserve referrals, but you're not owed them.
That's right.
And all the other advice comes from the place that you owe it to me, which is why I'm going to ask or offer you compensation or be really gimmicky and promotional so I can get you to give me those referrals. I just come at it from a different perspective of understanding and really respecting the relationship with the person who's going to refer you. So when you think about like it as a stepping stone, kind of like if I'm building a pyramid, right, and I'm setting that foundation, that's the ability to be really referable, to have that client experience that makes people comfortable putting their reputation on the line and recommending and referring you. And so some of the things that I did, right, as I was like building out my client experience, and I didn't do it intentional. I do want to be clear, like that first year, it was like, try this stuff and let's see what happens and let's see what works. And then let's reverse engineering what actually worked and then creating a system and a process behind it. But, you know, a lot of times it was just doing things a little bit different as part of that client experience. Like when someone would say yes to coming on board as a coaching client of mine, I knew the process we were about to go through was going to be uncomfortable. It was going to make them have to challenge themselves and it was going to stretch them and they were going to have to be willing to do things differently. I mean, that's what it looks like typically when you work with a coach. And we were talking about business decisions and your productivity, which are two things people hold tight. And so I would send what I call the welcome card or called a journey card when we first started working together that just said, hey, I know what we're about to do is going to stretch and challenge you. You're not on this journey alone. I'm your co-pilot, right? You're in great hands. This is what I do, and this is my zone of genius. And so it was just little things like that that would help me connect. Now, is there like an entire process and system for that client experience? Of course. But it was usually the things that I did that was relationship-based, not so much work-based, that would start planting, right, and giving them to a place where they would feel comfortable referring me. But here's the thing. A great client experience isn't going to get you referrals. There is actually another strategy on top of that is actually what's going to help you be able to receive those referrals from your referral sources. And so the foundational piece is, yes, you've got to be referable. You've got to have that sticky client experience, but then you also have to have a strategy on top of that to be able to generate referrals too.
And then I've heard recently is a great client experience is an expectation. So just meeting an expectation doesn't necessarily make referrals, have coming to you. So that is really, really good stuff. So obviously you send a journey card, and then in that journey card, you're kind of obviously connecting with them. Are you setting any type of expectations or planting a couple of those seeds so that way when the uncomfortable moments come up, like you've already kind of addressed those?
If you think about the totality of your client experience, all the pieces kind of work together, right? So I really believe, and it's so funny we're talking about the client experience because I'm actually working on my second book right now, which is the client experience, like teaching that strategy. Because I think how a small business deploys a client experience looks different than all the advice you can find online about how larger companies, like the Fortune 500 companies, deploy a client experience. And so I do think there are facets to that. I kind of teach it from their stages that your clients go through. Lots of people teach client experience from a stage perspective. My stages happen to be, there's the new stage, there's the active stage, and there's the alumni stage. Unless you're like a CPA or a financial advisor and they continue to stay with you year after year, your active stage doesn't end. You don't ever move into the alumni stage. And so from that perspective, it's just things that we would do. The work you do defines, I think, like the base of how your client experience looks. And then so I call work touch points, and then infusing in those relationship-based touch points as well that allow you to connect to them. So yes, there is a series of things. It's not just like, that was just one example of the journey card to kind of, and that's really, that piece is there really to overcome buyer's remorse, right? Because when people make the decision to change, they typically question their decision, right? Right after they make the decision to make changes or to invest in something. And typically I'm talking about services that are not hundreds of dollars, but thousands and thousands of dollars. And so, that journey card kind of helped overcome that buyer's remorse and kind of let them know that they're in good hands. But then, yes, there were other things that we would do throughout the client experience, whether that was setting the expectation mapping that we would do of like what it looks like to work with me. I mean, so many people don't think about it from that perspective. Like, just look at it from the perspective of, if you're a client of yourself, what is it like to actually work with you? Like, what is it like to be on the receiving end of working with you, and kind of following that process? And so the journey card, if you need to overcome buyer's remorse and make sure they're comfortable with trusting you, expectation mapping is really big, making sure you have a communication plan. But then what you do is you go from new to active to alumni. And then throughout that, of course, is your ability to have that client experience, to be referable. And then, of course, I teach pieces where like, okay, but we're not going to necessarily leave it to chance. Some clients will refer you without you having to do much other than just delighting them. Others are going to need a little bit of a nudge and a little help along in that perspective. And so first, we want to nail our client experience. Then we want to worry about referrals on top of that. But I find for a lot of businesses, yes, I think your client experience is something that needs to be considered. But a lot of times when clients come to me and they're like, hey, I need referrals, I always say, I'm going to assume you're referable. If you're not, right, we need to get that solved and get that fixed. But what I usually do when someone comes to me and says, hey, I need referrals, is I actually look immediately to, well, who's referred you in the past? And then we start building a strategy and a plan from that perspective. So the client experience is a piece of it. It's not typically where I start because of some of the assumptions that I make. When someone's received referrals before, I'm like, okay, now we need a strategy for those folks.
Awesome. I just wrote down a couple of notes because I love that stuff, and, a lot of people have that entitlement attitude, like just because they're my customer. And I work a lot with real estate agents, and there's a real estate agent around about every block, and everywhere you turn, there's another realtor. So what is it that they're doing to set themselves apart, stand out from the noise? And just having a customer experience is not enough. A good customer experience. It's the going above and beyond and doing those little things. So when you say, are you referable? There's a lot of things I can think of like why I would never send a referral to some people, because I wouldn't necessarily want to open up that door. And every person has that invincible door behind them, right? And only they can open it up to all kinds of people out there. And like that knowing, that liking, that trusting, what are some things that people can do to level up their referability, if that's even a word?
Yes, that is absolutely a word. I use it all the time. My editor doesn't love it, but I don't care. I'm like, you can make anything a word if you just hyphenate it, right? I mean, just throw that hyphen in there and call it a word. Another word I use a lot is processitize. And she's like, that's not a word. I'm like, it is in Stacey land, right? Yeah. So I think when you're thinking about that ability from what it looks like to be referable and to really have that ability for people to trust referring you, it's not usually the things that people think. And I find that to be, you're right. A lot of people come at it from an expectation, and that's where the asking advice comes from. Hey, if I deliver great quality service, right, then I would love for you to introduce me to some folks who are just like you, right? Like actually it makes my neck crawl on the back of my neck to say those words, because I can't stand them. And I actually hate them more when they're said to me, because you're right. That ability for me to deliver a great service is all that is owed, right? The client doesn't owe you anything. You owe them that great client experience and to do great work. And most I find, and I have a lot of real estate agents that are in my program, and what I find is that they feel like it's the continuation of the postcards and the drop-bys and the pop-bys that are ultimately what gets those referrals to them. And I'm like, no, that keeping in touch is important, but ultimately what makes me refer you is how I connected with you during the process and how much I trusted you during the process, which means communication is key. Setting my expectations in advance is key. Like those things that I would be like, hey, I would send my friend, my neighbor, my coworker to go work with Agent Joe, right? Or Agent Sally. I would send that person there because I know there's nothing about a real estate transaction, using this as our example, there's nothing about a real estate transaction that goes according to plan. Like nothing, because you don't control all the parts and the pieces. And so an agent who's really upfront about that and navigates those situations well and calms the nerves and continues to build trust, those are the types that are actually going to be able to generate those referrals. All the other things that you can do are nice, right? And they're definitely something to consider, and showing your gratitude in ways for them being a client throughout the process is important. But it also fundamentally comes down with the type of work you do. And once you do that really well, then we can layer some of the other stuff on top of it, right? That really makes it work and allows it to kind of have that longevity that we're looking for. But I always find that people have this expectation that if I get you to the goal line and I get you the keys to your new house, or taking the keys from your old house that we just sold, that earns me referrals. But at the end of the day, it is how I feel about that process with you. Right. That makes me say, yes, I would put my mother through this with you, right? Or yes, I would put my neighbor through this with you. And between my husband and I, we've probably sold 4 or 5 homes together. And thinking about the different agents that we've used through that process, there are just some that just do it differently. And that gets you to that place where you're like, okay, I actually really trust you. And I really would say that you're the person that I would trust to help my friend or my neighbor. And I think it does start there. And so that's not the like easy silver bullet answer, like use this language or do this, which are some of the things that I teach. But it does come down to that foundational point of really making sure that your clients trust you through the process. And here's the thing. 9 times out of 10, that is actually how you're going to handle something that doesn't go according to plan. and how you can handle that and get ahead of it in your communication and reminding them. Remember when we talked about at the beginning what this process was going to look like? Remember when I told you we'd get to this stage and then things would probably go a little haywire? Like reminding them that you already knew this was coming. Those are the things that I think are really, really valuable with getting to the place where someone's comfortable referring you. Now, once they refer you, then we can build on top of those things, right? And of course, I teach a process to turn clients and contacts into referral sources. But I think the easiest place for any business owner to start, particularly if they want to see a little faster success, is to look at the people who've already referred you and then make sure you have a strategy for them.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. Now, do you teach that if you're going to ask for referrals to teach at a certain time and a place in that journey, or do you also teach a completely non-existent, don't ever ask for a referral?
The latter, don't ever ask. Okay. And what people don't recognize about asking for a referral is that it actually starts to commoditize our relationship.
Okay.
A referral is actually never about you. Yes, you're the beneficiary who gets a new client. Yay, we love it, right? But at the end of the day, they're just not about us. And we like to think that they are, right? And so when you ask for a referral or you offer someone compensation, which is just like asking for a referral, you start to commoditize the relationship and you're artificially creating something that didn't naturally exist. And if you really think about the human dynamic and psychology behind why a referral happens in the first place, the reason why it happens, right, is because I'm helping someone else who needs to solve a problem and I'm going to be the hero, right? I get to help them, which whether we look at it as being the hero or not, it's what we are when we help somebody and connect them to you. And so you have to flip the dynamic in your head about, hey, these referrals aren't about me. They're really about the referral source. The referral source knows the person has a problem, and I need to maintain my relationship and trust with the referral source so that they will refer those prospects to me that have the problems that only I can solve, or only I can solve them in my specific way. And so that's why I teach we never ask. Asking manufacturers or artificially create something that isn't there. It then makes it about the work you want somebody else to do for you, which isn't why referrals happen. And the hardest thing about it is that it shortchanges, right, or kind of starts to hamper the referrals you'll actually receive in the future. Because if asking for a referral is the only time you get close to receiving any, and that means your trigger now has become the constant ask.
That's great.
And if the constant ask is the trigger, guess what that means? You're constantly asking. Well, guess what that means? Well, then you're looked as the person who's always asking. It's like, whoa, wait, here comes Stacey. Go, avoid her. Oh gosh, she's gonna say, how are you? And it's gonna seem like it's all about me. And then all of a sudden I'm gonna get the ask for a referral or ask to be connected to people. And so those are the reasons why I tell folks not to ask. But that doesn't mean we leave anything to chance. Right. Either. We just look at the relationship differently and we take a different approach and a different tactic to have success.
That is very, very powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And now once a referrals start coming in, it's working. Okay, I show up in their life. I'm referable, obviously, because I'm starting to attract referrals. Now, what's that next step? Do you teach people to make sure that you appreciate those referrals? Because they say behavior rewarded is behavior repeated. So if you're rewarding those behaviors of earning those referrals, what types of things are you sharing with your clients to be able to show their appreciation and go above and beyond?
Yeah, so the very first thing I always tell folks is I want you to separate out in your mind your referral sources from everybody else in your database. So one of the very first steps that I teach is going through the process of identifying who are your referral sources. And typically we look at this from they're the existing referral sources. Those are the folks that have referred you in the past. Now, when I typically teach this, I tell folks, you're going to want to go back 3 or 4 years to get a good amount of data of like, who are the clients that have been referred to you over the last 3 or 4 years? And then who did the referring of those clients. It's usually the way that I teach it. You can also do this with prospects because not everybody says yes, right, when they are referred to you or when they come into your prospect pipeline. And so from that perspective, you can also look at who was referred to you that didn't say yes and make sure you're collecting those referral source names as well. And so the first thing I always tell folks, the what you do is actually less important than the who you are doing it for. Because this is what happens when I'm working with a business owner. Let's just use a real estate agent as an example. When I'm working with a real estate agent and I'm getting them to look at their database, and let's just say for sake of argument, it's got like easy. I like easy round numbers. I don't like to do public math. So let's just say it's got like 300 people in it. Lots of real estate agents will call all 300 people in their database clients, even if they're just a neighbor or they're just someone they used to work with, right? So I always tell folks, you got to go in, you got to separate out your categories, and you've got to make sure that you're categorizing those that have referred you as a referral source. They could be a client, they could be a COI, they could be family and friends that have referred you, but once they've referred you, they get a different label. They stay a client, right? They keep their client label or their center of influence label or their friends or family label, but they also get the referral source label. And what I tell folks is I never teach the what you do before the who, because once people look at that list, let's say of the 300 people they had in their database, let's say that they have received over the last 4 years, right? 20 of them have referred them at least once over the last 4 years. So then we're looking at these 20 people. These are 20 humans. These are 20 individuals that have a relationship and a perspective of you and have a thought process about you, right? And so it's not about let me do what's easy, right? Let me slap my logo on some things and send it out the door and make sure I'm staying in touch. Actually, I teach you should never put logo on things that are for your referral sources, because that makes it about you, not about them. Great for clients, not for referral sources. But when we're looking at it from that perspective, it's like, okay, who are these people? And what I find when people go through this process and they're looking at that list of 20 names who've referred them over the last 4 years, right? They automatically start associating with them and they start looking for commonalities, looking for differences, looking for maybe why someone referred and then didn't again, looking for maybe they moved away, maybe the referral didn't go well, right? Maybe this person's referred me, wow, every one person every year for the last 4 years and I haven't talked to them in 12 months, right? Like there's all these emotions and things that come up when you look at that list. But it's once you can look at those 20 names and remind yourself those are 20 individuals that care enough about helping someone else and trusting you to be the person to help them, that person they know, that these are relationships to maintain. Now, the what we do for them, I do want us to do it where we can, like, it's going to be somewhere between 4 and 8 touch points in a year. Most folks in their first 2 years will do between 6 and 8 touch points. I definitely have some of the folks in my program who are like on their 7th year, and they can usually get away with less than 6 to 8, but they've been doing this and nurturing these referral sources now for 6+ years. And so, but we're looking at how we're going to take care of them. But the what we decide to do is really dictated by who these people are, right? If I looked at my list of referral sources and I realized, oh my gosh, they're all parents, well, then a great touch point would be to consider recognizing Mother's Day and Father's Day, right? I mean, so those are the kind of decisions that drive the touch points that we do. Now, when I teach this in my Growth by Referrals program, there's some considerations of like, okay, everybody does some of the same things, but then there's other touch points that are really based on who your folks are. So I have an attorney that's in the program that is obsessed with her black dog, like loves dogs, loves animals in general, loves dogs, and is obsessed with her black dog. Well, turns out one of the things she learned going through the program with me was that there's actually a National Black Dog Day. Right. So it would make sense that she would use a little bit about who she is, right? And then infuse that as a part of her touch point plan that she would do within those 6 to 8 touch points over a year. She's not going to do National Black Dog Day for all 8 touch points. That's weird, right? But like, it's just allowing her to infuse her personality with who her folks are. Then she's looking at her list going, oh my gosh, most of my people that refer me are dog owners too. Right? Those are the commonalities that we start to see when we know who is first. And it's funny because when I start talking about this, most people are like, okay, tell me what to do. And I'm always like, nope, because you need to know who you're doing it for first. Then the what is secondary, because the people who are on that list, you'll start to pay attention to how you can take care of them. What if your referral source list is none of them are local? Well, then if I tell you to go, you should have coffee with them at least once, right? I would say more, but let's just say for sake of argument, one time. Well, you can't. You can't do it locally, right? But could you do it virtually, right? So then you have to start paying attention to what if no one on your list is local and everyone's long distance like mine, right? Because we have business owners in 10 different countries all around the world in my programs, and a majority of the people in my programs are my referral sources. And so some of my referral sources who are also my clients, I've never even met. But I know them and we know each other well, and I have to look for other ways to stay connected to them through my referral plan as well.
That's amazing. It made me think about a lender, as a mortgage broker that I met years ago. And I remember them telling me that they hired a coach, and and at the time when I was just starting off in my business career, I was kind of like, they said they were paying this coach $50,000 or $5,000 a month. And then if you pay ahead, it was $50,000 if you pay in full for the year. And he paid in full for the year. And one thing I was like, what's this coach going to do? Like, are they going to send you realtors? And no, actually what we're doing right now, I'll give you an example. And I wanted to share this with you because I have a feeling this is the kind of what you do with your clients more on an intimate level, is to be able to share with them, okay, I want you to label your different realtors that are in your database, because 90% of his business came from new purchases. So what he said was, he goes, I have my top 20 realtors that I work with. And then I had to go through a discovery. So I had to make sure my antennas were up, but I was strategically going to their Facebook and Instagram and scrolling through and finding all of their likes and their different things. And one of the things he pulled out was, okay, this one realtor loves the New England Patriots. So he went on eBay, and there's a certain amount of money that you can spend and write off. And then there's money you can't. So legally, spend as gifts. And so he went on eBay and found a number one finger for the Patriots, like those big foam fingers. Yeah. Bought it for $5. And he packaged it up with a nice handwritten card, and he sent it for their birthday. And so he ordered a bunch of these different gifts and had them in his office for their birthdays, for different acknowledgments and stuff. And he goes, Curtis, I can't tell you how many referrals that I got just because they posted it on Facebook and Instagram. They put it out there saying, oh my gosh, I have the best lender. And next thing, the people are tagging people and sharing it. And I was like, that is incredible. And that just one gift that they sent paid for the coaching for the year, yes. Because of what happened. And I just never forget that. So when you were sharing, being strategic and doing these little things, but we're so busy, right? So we're spinning so many plates. So how do you as a coach get somebody to slow down enough to actually do it? Because one of the hardest things to do is to kind of quantify, relationships. And some people say, okay, if I do a Google pay-per-click ad, or if I do a Facebook ad, I'm going to get back this. It's harder when you're talking about relationships and earning referrals and building that connection over time, when we're in such a now economy and now technology environment. So what are some of the things that you do to help your clients slow down enough to realize the big picture of what you coach and teach?
You know that saying that says, when the student is ready, the master will appear, or the teacher will appear?
Yes.
I think that is a big part of what helps my clients have success when they work with me, is because they're probably, more than likely, I would say they're ready for it. They have gotten themselves to a place where they're like, I want to have referrals as a part of how I grow my business. Personally, I want them to want referrals to be the biggest piece of the pie of how they grow their business. I recognize there will always be other ways to grow our business that in addition to referrals. I just want it to be the biggest piece. And I think from that perspective, when they hear that it's not the ways they've been taught or they've heard for the last decade and decades and decades, I guess I would say, that it's not what they've been taught, that there's a different way to connect with people, that typically for the right person is exactly what they've been looking for. Mm-hmm. But the metrics, you're right, are very important, because at the end of the day, right, working with me, there's an investment, a price tag that goes along with it. And so the ROI matters as well. And so one of the very first things I have my clients do when they come in is that we actually set a goal. There's a formula we use to project out how many referrals we think you should be able to receive within your first year following the plan. And that is then based, of course, on historical data, and then obviously how many referral sources you have. And we kind of look at it and we kind of project out. So we already have a goal. So for example, I'll use Melissa, who is a real estate agent. She's one of my VIPs. She just started the program back in January of 2021. And she set her goal of 27 referrals for the year. Now, she averages 16 referrals a year. When we looked over year data, she's averaging about 16. We want to get you more. So she chose her reasonable goal based on all of her data and her numbers and her expectations for her business to the formula we look at. And she set her goal at 27. In her first quarter, she'd already brought in 8 referrals. So So she was already in that first quarter, halfway to where she usually is what, June or July. And here she was at the end of March, and she was already there. And I was like, if you stay on that pace, obviously you are going to hit your goal. But I would anticipate if you're staying on this pace and having such a strong start, you'll probably blow past that 27 goal from that perspective. And I don't always let people, depending, and it has a lot to do with referral sources, dictates if I would let someone set a goal from 16 on average to 27, right? Or someone's at 3, right? On average, there are people in my program who have like 3 on average referrals received in a year, and helping them figure out, okay, can you go to 15 or should we set the goal at 10 and let's just blow past it? I'm always like, let's blow past it, but let's make sure we set something that's realistic. But that's not the only metric that matters. So most people are going to look at this and they're going to say to themselves, okay, if I'm going to put time and energy and effort into developing a referral plan and executing on it and doing some things different, right, and taking time to do these things, I'm going to want to have that first year result. And I always tell folks, great, you're going to judge the success of your referral plan the way that I build it. You're going to judge the success of it on how you look in that first year. But what I'm most interested in is when we still have a conversation 3 years or 5 years or 7 years from now, and you've shown me how much growth your referrals has actually hit. So it's like talking to Catherine, who's in the program, who went from like 3 or 4 referrals a year to 20 in her first year to 40 in her second year. Right. And then like, okay, now we go in for the third year. Right. So like it's looking at that growth trajectory. Or someone like David, who had, I think, like 2 or 3 referrals his first year, then he went to 15, and then he went to 17. And Catherine and David and Melissa are all in 3 different industries. We're talking a real estate agent, an attorney, and a financial advisor. So their growth trajectories looks different based on their industry as well. But what it looks like in that first year is really important. In addition to, what does it look like year over year? And then that's not the only metric that we track, right? So yes, we track first year metrics, then we track over your growth over time, right? How do you keep setting a new goal and keep reaching it year over year over year? But then also the other metrics I'm telling folks to track are, what's your close ratio? Like, how many of these prospects are you closing that come by referral to you? And then, because of the way we track it once you're in the program, then we're looking at what's your closing ratio by referral source. And from that perspective. And so it really helps us get down to the granular level of understanding what's working and what's not working. And I think that's the piece that people miss. And you know, what's fascinating is, you told the story about the New England Patriots and the foam finger, right? And most people hear that and they're like, yeah, I could totally do that. I could totally Google stalk and Facebook stalk my people, and I could find out all their likes and dislikes and things like that and create something for them. The problem that I find with something like that is that it's individualized, and that makes it time intensive every single time you go to do something. And if you remember, I said 6 to 8 touch points in a year. That's 6 to 8 times trying to come up with something special like that. I always tell folks that if you can do something like that, that's a one-off, that's personal for them. That's an excellent touch point. But you need to just release yourself from the expectation it's supposed to be 6 to 8 of them like that. Sometimes the touch points we can do for everybody on our list, and yet it still feels very personalized when we receive it. And so we look for things that we can do that are almost like en masse, right? Like, hey, I can do this for everybody, but it'll feel personalized when they receive it. Of course, I always tell my folks at any point, do a one-off, do the foam finger, right? Do the one-off from that perspective when you know who these people are. Because as you said, that's another very important piece of the puzzle, is knowing who these people are so that you can help.
And I'm sure you probably also share that, like, not all referrals sources are created equal. And so, and also putting them like tagging those in separate buckets as well. And, I heard from it was a hotel chain, and there was a general manager of a hotel one time that told me that he breaks everybody down in A, B, and C. It's like, okay, this client not only books X amount of hotel rooms, but spends this amount of money with our restaurant. And then he books our meeting rooms and all this kind of stuff. So they calculate all the revenue that's coming in to that building. I was like, oh, okay. And then he categorizes like how many touch points, and also the gift allowance for the different levels. And I was like, he's it's very strategic is what I'm saying. And so that's what I love about what you're sharing here. It's very strategic, it's personalized, individualized, and it's not always the same for every single one of your clients.
Right. And it's not always the same type of touch point. So I think the easiest ones that we've talked about are the gift ones, because we can all kind of visualize it in our mind's eye of like what it looks like to get the foam finger or to get a different gift or something like that. But there's actually other categories of touch points that you can do. And that's what, like when I teach the framework of how we build our referral plan, there's actually a lot of pieces that kind of come into like, how do we think about these 6 to 8 touch points that we're going to do? And what are we trying to accomplish within them? And so, and it's not all gifts. Like I think some people hear that and they're like, I don't have the budget for that.
That's right.
This isn't about how much money you can spend. There are many people who I work with that are shoestring budgets. They're like, hey, I got like $300. So let's like, we're going to work within this budget or whatever. And I'm always like, well, then stop thinking you got to do gifts, because that's not the only thing that you have to do, right? Right. There are things. Yes, there are things that you can do that are free. And there are things that, let's be honest, that COVID has made easier for us to do. And people are more willing to consider doing that virtual coffee. Right. Now, I always teach like what the conversation is that you have during that virtual coffee actually matters more than anything else. But the reality of it is that it's not like you have to spend a lot of money to generate referrals, because at the end of the day, this is about you maintaining connection with your referral sources. And so what I teach is, and what I want people to always understand is, with these touch points, with our referral plan of these touch points that we're going to do 6 to 8 times throughout the year by identifying first our referral sources and building our touch point referral plan, like ultimately what I want to do is I want to impact how you feel about me. And that means I want you to know that I'm grateful for you, that I don't take you for granted, that I am thankful and I am full of gratitude for the fact that you make it easier for me to grow my business and to help more people. So you have to come from the right mindset and heart place, right? You have to come from the right place in terms of, hey, I want to impact how you think about me, which is know that I care about you and know that you're cared for. Because if I can impact how you feel about me, right, then I can impact how you think about me. So if I can impact how you feel, then with the language that I use, I can start to direct your thoughts in terms of how to think about me. And that is ultimately what my system teaches. So yes, it is, let's take care of our referral sources, but there's this other piece, right? That is the actual language that we use. We call it referral seeds, but there's a language that we use that makes those 6 to 8 touch points, right? Create a place of gratitude and thankfulness and coming from the right place, but then also use some specific language that allow all these pieces to come together so that I can impact how you feel and then direct how you think.
And those are all parts of your roadmap to becoming a referral ninja, correct? Like,
yes.
So in wrapping this up, I want everybody to understand, and also where they can go to connect with you as well and learn more about this. Because I mean, we can't possibly do this all in 45 minutes. So please share with us a little bit more about the Referral Ninja program. And I just think that's amazing.
Yeah. So here's what I always tell folks. The best place to check out, like, okay, I've listened to Stacey and Curtis have this conversation. This is really cool. Let me see where I'm starting from. I think the starting from place is so much more exciting in the beginning, of course, than the where you're going. So we have a 9-question quiz. It's called the Referral Ninja Quiz. You're going to land at one of 3 Referral Ninja levels once you take this 9-question quiz. It's just referralsquiz.com. But you're just going to take that quiz and it's going to tell you what ninja level you are. And then it's going to show you a roadmap of exactly what gaps you need to close to move up to the top level, which is the Referral Ninja Master. Now, of course, we also then teach that whole framework and what it looks like and walk you through it step by step in our program, Growth by Referrals. But I always tell folks, hey, let's just start with you knowing what ninja level you're at, right? And then you can maybe read my book or start listening to my podcast or come into our free Facebook group, Referrals Without Asking, and just start recognizing, okay, I'm a beginner ninja. Like, let me just start soaking in the information of what it would look like to move past the middle layer and get up to that master level. And then, of course, right, once you kind of understand of what it would look like and how you feel, then we can like have the conversation about joining my paid program. But first, the best place to start is where you're starting from and what gaps do you need to close. And having that information, I think, is so powerful, and it's empowering for you to know what next steps to take. So that quiz is a great place to start. And of course, we really love the Referral Ninja piece to it. We think it kind of gives it a little fun aspect to it, and looking at your colored belt and what level you are as you work your way up to the master level.
And that's on StaceyBrownRandall.com.
It is. If you go to StaceyBrownRandall.com, you'll see the icon to take the quiz, or you can just go to referralsquiz.com and it'll redirect you right to the right place to take that quiz as well.
And I know you, Ed, from time to time, you also have a 7-day challenge, correct?
Yes. And so we typically have it going when we are not doing a live challenge. So it really just kind of depends when it's actually available and when it's not. But all of that's available on StaceyBrownRandall.com. I think the live challenges are way more fun than the 7-day one because that's more automated for folks that they can just start whenever. But I believe that those live challenges are some of the best. And we do those in 4 and 5 days, make it a little bit easier when I'm teaching you live. So yes, those are definitely an option too.
Oh, that is amazing. Well, thank you so much. Anything that you would like to share? Any other wisdom that you'd like to share in wrapping this up?
If someone's listening to this episode right now and they're thinking to themselves, okay, I really resonate with what Stacey has talked about and this whole idea of referrals without asking, that makes sense to me, that serves me, that fits who I am as a person. The number one thing I would ask you to do is just go through and look at who are your referral sources and allow that knowledge to direct if you want to take the next steps. If you want to figure out now, how do I really take care of them in the right way so I never have to ask for a referral? And so just knowing who those people are, whether it's 3 people or 33 people is irrelevant, but just knowing who your existing referral sources are is such a great place to start. Yes, you'll probably look at that list and be like, okay, I need more, right? And there is a way to develop potential referral sources into actual referral sources, but just start by knowing, hey, who's referred me in the past? I think that is such an empowering moment for a business owner to take to really decide, okay, and now what do I want to do with this knowledge?
That is absolutely brilliant. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom. I can't wait for everybody on our audience to be able to hear this. This is so in alignment with what we'd like to bring people together and learn more about. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Hey there, it's Curtis again. If you have not downloaded the 7 most powerful referral secrets, hop on over to referralsecrets.com. It's free. That's simply referralsecrets.com. Also, we give away prizes every week to our subscribers. So make sure you click the subscribe button. Thank you again for listening to another episode of Referral Secrets.